Hello everyone. It's me, Chaff Commander Coffee, and this is the second part of my Humankind Cultures, VictorOpendev tier listing. So you've probably already seen the Ancient Era one, in which case we will go into an in-depth discussion about the cultures ranked in order of best one in the era, worst one in the era, and then the others that come in between. For the classical era, which is the second era in the game, of course. So let's see. We are going to start with the Achaemenid Persians. I just need a moment to reacquaint myself with everybody in this era so that I can properly rate them. Yeah, I think that's what we're going with. Yeah, okay. So Achaemenid Persians. These guys right here. I'm going to rate these guys. Oh boy, this is I'm going to rate them A tier. Alright, so Achaemenid Persians are an expansionist civilization. I'm not going to go over what each of the different things mean, the cultural orientations. If you watch the Ancient Era one, then you know what they do. Otherwise, you can always go quickly look those up. But yeah, I'm going to rate the Achaemenid Persians as A tier for a number of reasons. We'll go into their abilities first. The first ability of the Achaemenid Persians is they get a +2 to their city cap. That's Cyrus's Shadow, that's their civilization bonus. So that carries on throughout all the eras. +2 city cap. So cities provide you with a few things. Firstly, they give you a pop growth, an additional potential pop growth, right? Every city can grow population. So the more cities you have, the more pop you can grow simultaneously. So having 2 extra cities towards your cap means, now if you go over your cap, you lose influence and stability in your cities, right? Now if you don't have a way of generating a lot of influence very easily, which you can't, besides the Olmecs, and if you took them in the Ancient Era, even then they don't really generate enough influence to go over the city cap reliably. There's one civilization that can, but that doesn't pop up till the early modern. So you really don't want to go over your city cap. So the Persians giving you 2 extra city cap allows you to get 2 extra cities down to start growing population from. But it also enables you to have 2 extra build queues, right? For units or for infrastructure in general, and the faster you can get more cities down, the more developed they will be as you progress through the game. So getting 2 additional city cap in the classical era is a massive benefit. Wouldn't quite put them in the S tier ranking for that though, but it is a huge bonus, and it's always good. It's always good to have more cities. Then they have their emblematic district, which is the Satrap Palace. The Satrap Palace provides +1 influence, +5 money. I believe it collects money, but it might not collect anything. I'm not 100% sure on that. It gives you 2 extra influence per adjacent district, so it's a good way to generate additional influence. Providing extra money and influence is fine. It's not a huge amount, but the main benefit of the Satrap's Palace is +3 money per number of trade routes, right? So if you have 7 trade routes passing into that city, it's going to produce an extra 21 gold, which is the equivalent of an extra 3 population, right? So if you have, what you want to do with the Persians is have a few select civilizations, preferably not on your borders, but they could be on your borders too, that all you do is trade with them, right? You want like 2 or 3 civilizations that all you're doing is you're buying all of their resources. And you can get the Satrap's Palace to generate an additional 60 gold per turn on this one quarter. And you can build one in every single territory. So the Achaemenid Persian Satrap Palace can generate obscene amounts of gold very quickly if you have trade routes. If you lose your trade routes, obviously then it starts becoming a very bad district. But it's very unlikely that you'll want to be going to war with everybody in the classical era, because you can't really extend your power out that far. You'll still be doing mostly border conflicts rather than like crossing continents or like getting open borders to attack nations far away from you. So at the very least, you'll have a few civilizations that you're trading with, and you can get up to +30 gold per turn per Satrap's Palace very, very quickly. So they generate a incredible amount of gold, which is really helpful because again, it means that you're not reliant on building market districts to generate your cash, and getting your merchant stars will help you age up faster as well. So Satrap Palace really solid, and then you've got the emblematic unit, the Immortals, which are they're quite early on in the era. You get them at Standing Army. I think they replace swordsmen, but I can't really remember. They might just replace spearmen. I'm pretty sure they just replace ancient era spearmen. But they are a 28. I want to say 28, but they might be 26 strength. It's hard to tell because I play it on the highest difficulty. So the AI gets +2 strength on their units, but they're like a higher strength spearman unit, so they automatically just will outfight any cavalry from either the ancient or classical era. They will win against any cavalry in those eras. They then get Bastion. This is their special ability, which is Bastion. They are stronger when fighting from high ground or fortified positions, right? So if they're fighting from a garrison or a fortified city quarter, I think they changed it a bit in the VictorOpendev. I believe it was just they get a bow. Well, no, actually, no. I think it is just from fortified positions. So if they're on a district which is fortified, they get extra strength, or from high ground. So if they're fighting from a hill down, they get extra strength. I think it's like a +3. So it's quite significant. So if you're tactically placing the Immortals in good spots, they will outfight pretty much anything in the era, including other people's unique units. So as a tactical unit, they're very solid, but they are slightly more niche because of that. But being a spearman means they're a bit more all-rounded because they will automatically defeat cavalry. And then if they're on high ground, they will defeat everything else. Or if they're in a fortified city spot. So it's very difficult to take the Persian cities because they have Immortals protecting them. And if you're invading a city and you manage to get Immortals onto the city tiles, if the city tiles are still fortified, I think they still get the bonus. So they can also be useful at assaulting cities as well, but I'm not so sure about that because I didn't have enough time to test every little thing, so I can't remember if they do that exactly. But overall, Immortals are very solid. They come very early in the classical era as well, which does make a big difference. If you get your units quite late in the era, then obviously they need to be particularly powerful to make the most use out of them. But yeah, generally speaking, +2 city cap, great. Satrap Palace, great. Immortals, good. So, overall, very, very solid civilization, but I wouldn't quite put them in S tier, but they are definitely one of the better A tier civilizations for the classical era. Next, we have the Axomites, which are the next dudes here. The Axomites, I'm going to be placing them on B tier. I don't think they quite deserve an A tier slot. I've got another civ that I would rather place there. And yeah, I think we're putting them on B tier. They are quite good though for B tier. So they are a merchant civilization, so all about making money. Their civilization trait, Horn of Plenty, gives 10% more gold generated from ongoing trade on city or outpost. So as long as you have trade that is occurring in that city, the city generates 10% more money. That's not like for every trade route like the Satrap's Palace. Satrap's Palace is base money for every trade route. The Axomites just give you a 10% income bonus for having trade, which is very good, but it's not as powerful. They still make quite a lot of extra cash. Like if you make 100 gold, they make an extra 10 gold. And it's not like it doesn't require you to have anything. It's just literally, do you have any amount of trade? And then they get the extra 10%, which is good. Their emblematic quarter is the Great Obelisk, which gives 3 faith. So it's the first faith generating emblematic quarter that we've had a look at. It gives 1 money, 3 money per adjacent market quarter. So you do need to build some market quarters to get the most benefit out of this. However, it also adds 1 money per territory under the religion's influence. So whatever your state religion is, it gets an extra 1 gold for every territory following it. So that's not just your territory. If your religion crosses into other civilizations' borders, or other civilizations follow your religion, or you follow their religion, doesn't matter. As long as whatever your state religion is, if it's widely spread, then you will generate more gold from the Great Obelisk. And because it provides faith, it is a way of also scaling up the spread of your religion. And because you can build one in every territory, again, just like the Satrap's Palace, it can scale up its value quite well, but it doesn't make as much money as the Satrap's Palace, which, as a merchant civ, the fact that their emblematic quarter doesn't give as much cash as an expansion civs, there you have it. And its adjacency bonus is based on market quarters, which you're probably not likely to build as many as, say, the Satrap's Palace gives influence per adjacent district. It doesn't care which kind of district. The Obelisk requires market quarters, which we aren't going to have as many of, or generally speaking. So it's a bit more niche, but it's still good. And you can still happily build one in every city without or every territory without even building market quarters, and it'll still generate a good amount of gold and provide a little bit of extra faith spread. Then we move to their emblematic unit, which is the Shotali. These replace swordsmen. They have 27 strength, so a couple of strength points higher. Otherwise, they're exactly the same as a swordsman. Their special ability is Grappler, which gives them a larger zone of control, which cannot be ignored. Now, I'm not actually sure what that means, because I used Shotali in one of my runs, and units seem to just kind of ignore their zone of control anyway. That, or I wasn't quite certain how zone of control was working. But yeah, like, I'm going to place Shotali as they are swordsman units with slightly higher strength. Now, you're probably going to build some swordsmen anyway, so cavalry have, like cavalry, so like horsemen and stuff, do have the ability to ignore zone of control. So they can't ignore Shotali's zone of control, assuming it overrides it, which I assume they do. Which means cavalry can't ignore Shotali, but Shotali are swordsmen. They're not spearmen, so they don't get bonus versus cavalry. They just kind of get in the way. So I kind of rate the Shotali as just being slightly stronger swordsmen, which is like not a bad thing. It's just that they don't really have much else going for them. But having stronger swordsmen is, again, it's not bad. Like, you're going to build swordsmen, or you're probably going to build some swordsmen, so you might as well have slightly stronger swordsmen. But that's why I put them as a B tier. Like, their bonuses are good. They're certainly one of the better civs in the classical era, but they're not. Nothing sets them apart as being exceptional. They're just pretty decent. Like, you won't feel bad about picking the Axomites if you don't get an option to pick the civ that you wanted. It's just that none of their stuff really pushes them to be like amazing. Okay. Next on our list we have the Carthaginians, and the Carthaginians are going straight to S tier. So the Carthaginians are a merchant civilization. And the reason they're in S tier, literally, we don't even need to talk about anything else. The reason they're in S tier is their civilization ability. They modify all constructible buyout cost, like the Phoenicians from the ancient era, but they reduce their constructible buyout cost by 50%, half price of buying any infrastructure or district with gold. Now, buying stuff with gold instantly produces it, and having half price off all of it is just. And that's for the rest of the game. If you pick Carthaginians, everything is all your constructibles, districts, and infrastructures all half price for the rest of the game, which is it has such an obscene impact on your economy because it's not just that you save gold, it's that you can get twice as much for the same amount of gold. And because you're getting twice as much, your economy also ramps up faster because you're getting the districts and the infrastructure down quicker, which means they pay off faster. So it's just an exponential economic bonus that it's never obsolete. It's really, really good. I shouldn't have to explain too much about why that is. It just is. It's why they're S tier. But they have other things going for them as well. So let's talk about their emblematic quarter, which is the Kothon. The Kothon is a unique harbour. So once again, a unique harbour can be built alongside a standard harbour in every coastal district, every coastal territory. The Kothon provides +3 industry, so it collects food, gold, science, and industry on water tiles per normal, but it also produces 3 industry per adjacent coastal water, so on average that's about 12 or 15 industry per Kothon. 2 industry per adjacent lake, so if you build it in a lake it's not quite as good, but it's still decent. You get an extra worker slot on the city, and yeah, so it's just basically it gives industry on your sea tiles. A maker's quarter, so if you build a maker's quarter on a tile and you get an average production of let's say 3, you build it near a forest, you get like the actual maker's quarter, which is like 5 industry, and then you get the 3 forests, which is another 3 industry on each, so that's like 14 industry or so. That's about the same as a Kothon. So a Kothon provides it's basically building a maker's quarter that also provides you a load of food and possibly some science as well, because there are some science tile benefits in the ocean too. So it's just nice. It's nice to have. You get additional food and industry by building a Kothon, and that's going to help your population grow and you to build more stuff, infrastructure and stuff faster. So it's always good. It does come with a bit of fortification. I don't really. I mean, again, naval units I haven't really bothered building, but I guess it has some additional fortification on a harbour, which is nice. But yeah, it's a good building. It's good, but I wouldn't say it's one of the better buildings in the era. Like the Satrap's Palace is like a million times better than the Kothon, but it's the fact that Kothon is good and on the Carthaginians, that's why it's solid. Then you get their emblematic unit, which is the War Elephant. This is a melee-based heavy cavalry unit, and it's like a 31, 33. I think it's like 33 strength. It shows up when you get mounted warfare, I think, or it might show up a bit later. I can't remember exactly what tech it shows up on, but it's very, very solid. And its special ability is Trample, which makes it stronger when attacking weaker units, which basically means it's stronger attacking anything from the classical era. So whilst you have war elephants, they will beat any unit in the classical era. So you have it is a melee unit, so it does have the caveat that it doesn't have the extra strength that a range unit would have with the non-retaliating strikes. But and because it's cavalry, it can't go over fortifications, so it's not quite so good for sieges. But if you can break the walls down, then you can move a war elephant in, and it will trample things. But generally speaking, in field combat, you can't beat the war elephant. Spearmen don't have enough strength. Even things like I guess if you had an immortal and he was on a hill, then he would be able to hold off a war elephant. Or if you had like the Greeks and you had enough hoplites in formation that you could fight, then the war elephant wouldn't get the trample bonus. But generally speaking, it is harder to get the trample bonus on higher difficulties. Obviously, I played on the Humankind difficulty. But yeah, generally speaking, they do have a favorable matchup against most classical era units. Like they will always have a favorable matchup against swordsmen, ancient era archers, horsemen, that kind of thing. So generally speaking, their war elephant unit is very solid. But yeah, the S tier really comes from their civilization bonus, which is all constructible buyout cost by 50%, which becomes so much more powerful if you take some merchant civilization. Like the later you take a merchant civilization, generally speaking, the more money they'll produce. So if you take a merchant civilization in the early modern, like say you play the Dutch, or if you play like the Mayans in the medieval, like they produce so much extra cash that buying things out with a Carthaginian pick in the classical is just so powerful that it deserves the S tier slot for the classical era. Okay, next civilization is the Celts. I didn't actually get a chance to play with the Celts very much, but I think the Celts are going to be going up to. Oh boy, this is a hard choice. This is actually a hard choice because I'm stuck between. No, I think the Celts have to the Celts have to be taking the second A tier slot. I wouldn't put them as powerful as the Achaemenids, but the Celts are really good. So the Celts are an agrarian civilization. Now, whereas the Harappans don't have the infrastructure really built up to make use of the agrarian ability, the Celts absolutely do, because you will have a couple more. You will have your second or third city by now, so you got more cities. The Celts will be able to produce a lot more food in general, so they'll be able to use the agrarian ability a lot more regularly than the Harappans would, which allows them to actively get higher population a lot more quickly. The Celts trait is Druidic Law, which gives +2 food on districts which produce food. This is harbours and farmers districts, which by now you should have more of them, so picking the Celts will immediately boost your food in all your cities by, I'd say, about let's say about 10 points, maybe 6 to 10, so it's an extra population of all your cities producing food, which is not bad. And obviously you'll be building more food production buildings in the classical era, assuming you pick the Celts. Their emblematic quarter is the Nemeton, which is probably one of the reasons I'd put them as A tier. Because here's the thing, agrarian ability is really strong, but you need something to be able to massively increase your food output. The Harappan aqueduct is +1 food per adjacent tile. The Nemeton is 1 extra food. It collects food. It provides 3 faith, so it lets you spread your religion around a little bit, which can be really helpful. It provides 1 extra food per population in the city. So the more you grow, the more the population is self-sustaining, which is really important to keep your food count high when you're trying to get your agrarian ability to fire off, right? And it also provides an additional 3 food per adjacent farmer's quarter, which is a much bigger bonus in general. So 3 food per adjacent farmers. You throw this thing down, you have 10 population in the city. No, so let's say you have 12 population in the city. That's 2 free farmers by throwing an Nemeton down. If you have 12 population, which you will have cities with 12 population upon entering the classical. 3 food per adjacent farmers quarter. Assuming you have 3 farmers quarters adjacent to the Nemeton, that's an extra 9 food. That's 1.5 extra pops working food. It provides 1 food itself, so that's like 10. So, like, just building a Nemeton, that's like a 22 food swing on your city. That's insanely good. That's such a high yield district, and you can build one in every single territory. So you can get a really big faith boost to push your religion out, and you get a massive amount of food, which will allow you to activate the agrarian ability to exponentially grow your population very, very quickly, which you can either use for warfare or just further expansion or whatever. But yeah, the Celts are definitely an A tier based on their emblematic quarter. Now, the emblematic unit is the Gaisati, or yeah, it's the I think it's the Gaisati or Gaisati. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but yeah, Gaisati. They are a swordsman unit. They replace swordsmen. They actually have 1 lower strength than standard swordsmen. I think they're 24 strength swordsmen. I don't know if they require iron like normal swordsmen. I don't remember. But the main ability of them, despite having a bit lower strength, is they have no combat penalty strength from taking damage. So when a unit is taken 25 points of damage or more, they count as damage. They get -1 strength. And when they're on their last 25 HP, they get a -2 strength. So the Gaisati they have no penalty from that, which means if you combine the fact that your units are kind of like berserker units, you don't really care how much damage they take, you're just going to keep throwing them at the enemy. And the fact that the Celts have such amazing population growth, they actually make a really good war civ because they can grow their population up really fast, and then they can spit out like 20 of these Gaisati and just throw them at their enemies. And they just don't care how much damage they take, they don't care how many troops they lose. They will win by virtue of numbers, which I think is where the Celts come in really strong as like a mixed agrarian like military civ. And yeah, generally speaking, I'm going to put them in A tier primarily for that bonus on their emblematic quarter. That's what makes them really powerful. If you combine it with the fact they're an agrarian culture, their civ trait is not that amazing. +2 food on districts producing food is, well, it's double what the Harappans get. So if you build a farmer's quarter, the farmer's quarter is going to be generating an additional 2 food on top of whatever else you place. If you build a farmer's quarter next to a Nemeton, it's generating an additional 5 food plus whatever tiles it gets access to. So, farmer's quarter is generating additional 5 food is pretty. That's like an extra farmer just by building a quarter. So you don't really need people working food as the Celts to get loads and loads of food. But if you do have people working food, then you're going to fire off your agrarian ability over and over again for very, very fast pop growth. So Celts, A tier. Now we're moving on to the oh dear, the worst civ in the era. Probably one of the worst civs in the game, actually, if I had to say. It's the Goths. They're D tier. Oh, the Goths! I feel so bad for the Goths. Okay, let's talk about the Goths. They are a militarist civ. Now, as we said, the militarist ability is more useful when defending cities as opposed to using it offensively, and the Goths are intended to be an offensive civ. The Goth's ability is Nimble Pillage, which gives 5 combat strength from ransacking on the army. So if you're ransacking a tile, the army gets +5 strength, which is a very large bonus, right? It means your units will outfight just about everyone else's units as long as you're ransacking, okay? However, it doesn't make your armies aren't inherently stronger. They have to be ransacking, right, to get that strength bonus. And ransacking takes a lot of time. All right, it takes 7 turns. Well, I don't know if that's again might be subject to change, but if you have more units in a stack, it does reduce the time to ransack. But say it takes 5 turns, I have to sit there ransacking for 5 turns to get my combat strength bonus or to benefit from it, and then I guess I can go attack a city afterwards. But you're basically going, hey, my opponent, I'm going to come attack your city in 5 turns, just letting you know so you can build up a proper garrison and fight me off, even if I do get the +5 strength, right? So, yeah, got the pillage, the combat strength bonus is great, but it's so situational that I think it doesn't have that much impact. I did play the Goths, and I found it really hard to get situations where I'd get the extra strength bonus and actually be able to use it, so yeah. Then we have the Emblematic Quarter, which is the Tumulus, which is... Alright, the Tumulus doesn't collect any resources. It doesn't collect food, it doesn't collect industry, it doesn't collect gold or science or anything. It produces 3 influence and 3 faith. It has no adjacency bonuses, and it still costs you 10 stability to build it. You can only build 1 per territory as well. So it uses up a tile to give you 3 faith and 3 influence, and that's it, right? That's all it does. It's rubbish. It has no adjacency bonuses, so you're just using up a tile to get 3 faith and 3 influence, which is not very much, right? Literally everyone else's emblematic quarters either give more faith or as much faith, or they give more influence or as much influence, right? And they also do something else. The Tumulus doesn't do anything else. It's just you get 3 influence, you get 3 faith, and that's it. So you're spending turns building something to get influence and faith on a civilization that wants to be like very offensively focused, very military, like taking wars to the enemy, and that's all it does. It doesn't help you do that. So there you go. There's a Tumulus. Emblematic unit is Gothic Cavalry. Now the Gothic Cavalry you get them at Mountain Warfare. They are like 29 strength, so they're quite high strength cavalry units. So they will outfight ancient era spearmen, but they won't fight classical era spearmen as well. So nations that have unique spearmen units in the classical, they don't do very well against those, but they do pretty well against ancient era spearmen. They're like 29 strength or something base, so pretty good. If you pillage with them, they're like 34 strength, which makes them stronger than war elephants. But like you have to pillage with them first, so again, you're like kind of letting your opponent know that, hey, look, I have an army over here, just letting you know so you can build a proper defense to fight them. Their special ability is Ransacker. Bonus combat strength when ransacking, so they get even more combat strength from ransacking, which does make them literally like nigh invincible when they're ransacking, but that's it. I think they also require 2 iron and horses, so it's a bit difficult to actually get Gothic Cavalry, because getting 2 iron is not like... That's something you do have to keep in mind. Some of the unique units, they do actually have quite high resource costs, and the Gothic Cavalry require 2 iron. If you don't have access to 2 iron, you can't train them anyway. And it's easy enough to get 1 iron, but getting the second copy might be a bit more of a challenge, depending on how your map generates. But yeah, the Goth Cavalry, just a bit expensive. And then the other part of their ability is not just when they're ransacking, but also when they are fighting on a district, right? Specifically on enemy districts. Now, you cannot move cavalry onto enemy districts in a siege. So say you're attacking an enemy city, you cannot move cavalry onto an enemy district until you've knocked the walls down, right? So until you knock the walls down, the Gothic Cavalry actually cannot participate in the siege, right? They're just kind of sat there taking ranged attacks for nothing, right? And if you never can knock the walls down, Like, if the enemy destroys all your siege weapons, then they're just sat there doing nothing. They're just basically useless units in the siege. So they're very, very situational to get that bonus. Basically, the way I treat the Goths is they're a civilization you pick to make one of your neighbors miserable because you keep ransacking all their land, right? But they don't help you become stronger. The Goths do not make you stronger by picking them. They are effectively just there to ruin someone's day. And they don't even do that very well, because there are other civs like the Huns who just do a much better job of ruining everyone's day, whereas the Goths only just go, oh cool, well I have a vendetta against this player because, I don't know, they picked the civ that I wanted, so I'm just going to go and attack them just constantly, right? Like, the Goths don't... Nothing about the Goths is always good. Everything about the Goths is situational or just not good. So they're basically a not good civ. That's basically how it boils down. Sorry to say, but the Goths are just, yeah, they need some work. They need something. If I was to say what the Goths need to make them better, the combat strength bonus when pillaged, if ransacking gets made faster, right? If ransacking is made faster, then the Goths will be better, right? Because they will ransack things quicker, so they can get their strength bonuses and they can have like a bit of a snowball effect to their armies. The Goth Cavalry, bonus when fighting on districts, bonus when ransacking and stuff. I don't know how you change. The biggest thing the Goths need to have them changed is the core mechanic of the game. The ransacking needs to be made faster. If ransacking is made faster, then and siege weapons were made more relevant, then the Goths would be better. The Tumulus needs to be changed to have some kind of adjacency bonus, like maybe have the Tumulus give like make it so the Tumulus can be built but not attached to the city, right? Like how garrisons, right? You wouldn't even need to buff it then, right? If you could just build the Tumulus on any old random tile in the territory, that would actually be pretty good. Because then you're not using up any tiles that you would otherwise be working. And you could even give it the ability to build districts off of the Tumulus. So it's kind of like an early hamlet, but it doesn't collect resources. It just lets you maybe build your cities out in the middle of nowhere, or expand out your tiles a bit more. That could be good. But so the Tumulus being unattached from the city and probably not giving a stability penalty, right? The fact it gives a stability penalty makes it even worse. If it just was stability neutral, like it didn't change your stability, it just gave you 3 influence, 3 faith, and you could build it any way you want, right? That would be good. That's the only change you'd need to make the Tumulus better, and then it would probably be pretty balanced, right? Because it's not like it scales with adjacency. It's just you build it if you want a little bit more influence, a little bit more faith. But it's not like it's not game breaking. You still have to spend time building it, and it's not like it doesn't collect resources. So it's just kind of got nothing better to do, build a Tumulus in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of how I see that district anyway. But except currently as it is, that you don't have a reason to build it because it uses up your tiles. So there you go. Right. Next civilization is the Greeks. These are the scientists of this era, so they can technically research the medieval era tech ahead of schedule. Where here they are, Greeks. They're going in C tier. Again, another C tier science civ. Mostly because of their quarter and the civilization bonus, which we'll go into now. The civilization bonus is Socratic methods, which gives you 2 science per researcher on city or outpost, right? So for every scientist you have in the city, you get an additional 2 science. It's not on every city or outpost. There is, for example, the Dutch get a bonus that applies for every worker, but to all cities. So it has massive scaling potential. The Greeks is only on that city or outpost. It's not all of them, as far as I know. That's how I've read it, and that's how I've seen it in game. I haven't noticed some massive. I did play the Greeks at one point, and I didn't notice some insane science scaling by having loads of scientists. So all I noticed was a small bonus, which is fine, but it's not crazy. So the Emblematic Quarter is the amphitheatron, which it doesn't collect anything. Again, it's just a district you build. It gives 1 influence per current era, so 2 influence in classical, but it gets better as you advance. 3 science per current era, so 6, and 2 science per adjacent district. It also is minus 10 stab. The problem with the amphitheatron is basically if you build them, you don't need to build science quarters because it produces science. It produces a bit of influence as well, which is quite nice. And it gives 2 science per adjacent district. So you want to build like the amphitheatron and then surround it with other things. But the fact that you lose stability from it doesn't make sense because it's supposed to be a theater, right? It's like it's a theater. The amphitheatron should be a unique commons quarter. It should give influence per current era, science per current era, science per adjacent district, and otherwise it should function like a commons quarter. It should be a commons quarter that the Greeks get very early, like with philosophy, because that's when they can build it. I think is when you advance, you can build the amphitheatron immediately. But normally you have to get to imperial conquest, which is like a lake. Is like one of the last texts in the classical era to get commons quarters, which are basically your stability quarter. The amphitheatron should be a Greek, like, unique commons quarter. It should give 5 stability per adjacent district. And some people will be like, that's insane. If you build it in the middle of a hexagon, then you're going to get an extra 30 stability from it, or 25 stability, or whatever, as well as all the extra science. Yes, you will, which would make it good, because right now it's like kind of it's better than building a science district, I would say, but that doesn't make it good. That just makes it like a nice alternative, and you can only build 1 per territory, so it's like it's fine, but it's not great. But if it had the stability bonus, like it was a commons quarter, then it would encourage a Greek player to build like this, build city states, right? To make sure that you don't just build amphitheatrons, you actually have to build districts around them. And it would encourage Greek players to play a bit taller, or maybe not even a bit taller, but play a bit more builder, which is kind of what Science Civ wants to do anyway. So yeah, I think, yeah, if they had that change, it would make them better. But as it stands, they're kind of eh. They're not bad, but they're not good, so they're kind of eh. That's why they're C tier. They do get, however, the Greeks do get a very good emblematic unit, but unfortunately this is not enough to push them up to B tier, despite the unit being very good. They get hoplites. Now, hoplites are a replacement for spearmen. They have 28 strength base. I think it's 28, yeah. You get them very early on in the classical era, and they only require 1 copper, so they're very resource cheap. Like, if you have any source of copper, you can get hoplites. Which are very solid. They're anti-cavalry, so they'll beat cavalry in the era. And they have the phalanx ability, which gives them +1 combat strength for each unit with the phalanx ability that is adjacent to them. Now, units normally get +1 strength for adjacent friendly, right? It doesn't matter if the unit is in front of them, behind them, to the sides of them, they get +1 strength for having friendly adjacent. The hoplite gives an additional +1 for every other hoplite next to them, right? So if you have 1 hoplite in one tile and a hoplite next to them, they're effectively getting +1 for friendly adjacent and +1 for friendly phalanx. If you put another hoplite on the other side of them, then the middle hoplite is going to get +2 from adjacent and +2 from phalanx, which pushes them up to 32 strength, right? So you can see how the Greeks can have potentially very, very powerful armies just purely consisting of hoplites, and where they just grind forward. They just like push their units forward in formation and just like beat you to death, right? They don't care what units you've got. They just roll over you 1 unit at a time, like they're very meat grinder-esque. They have a very powerful. I think this is a very powerful unit for the era. So I think, unfortunately, the Greeks' Civ ability and unique district isn't good enough to put them up to B tier. Despite the hoplites, I would probably say are like an A tier unit. They're one of the best units in the era. The problem is they're just held back by everything else that the Greeks offer. So yeah, I actually treat the Greeks as kind of like, if you were going to play the Greeks, you don't play the Greeks for their science bonuses. You play the Greeks to just smash all of your neighbors with hoplites, because the hoplites are really solid. So that's how I'd play the Greeks, like the Macedonians, like Alexander's empire. Right? I don't care about their other bonuses. I'm playing the Greeks for the hoplites, right? But unfortunately, that does mean that they don't play to their strengths very much. So that's why the Greeks are going to be a C tier nation here. All right, now moving on to the Huns. The Huns, some people are, lots of people have been saying the Huns are absolutely insane militarily, and they have no equal and all that. I'm putting the Huns at beta. Yes, the Huns are very good at military, and that is the only thing they are good at, right? They have no economic bonuses. All they do is get loads of units and they attack people. And to be more specific, the Huns do have some problems with attacking people with the changes to fortifications, so I'll get into that. But the Huns' first ability is Formidable Steeds. This is their civilization ability, so this will carry on to every era. 3 combat strength on all cav units, including light and heavy cavalry, and 3 combat strength on mounted nomads. Now, mounted nomads are basically the special, like the prehistoric tribes you have are considered nomads. The Huns and the Mongols both have mounted nomad units. So the idea is if you pick the Huns, you should probably pick the Mongols, right? Because you'll get a +3 strength bonus on Mongols. So that's this is another problem with the Huns, which is why I don't think that has high tier. The early snowball you get with military with the Huns is only realized, like, the thing is you're kind of expected to take the Mongols afterwards, but you've already done your military snowballing. There's not much reason to pick the Huns after, or pick the Mongols after, because you've already done your military snowball. You kind of want to move into being a bit more of a builder civ to catch back up with economy, because all you've been doing is warfare. But instead, the game kind of encourages you to then go to the Mongols, which means you've already done your military snowball, and now you're gonna do it again. Which is kind of like, and also once people see you pick Huns, they're gonna assume you're gonna pick Mongols. So in a multiplayer scenario, people kind of, like, you're a one-trick pony. Like, everybody knows what you're gonna do next, so they can just build assuming that that's gonna happen, and then you just lose all of your effectiveness. Whereas if, like, you were playing against single player against the AI don't know how to fight the Huns. That's why the Huns are as powerful as people assume they are, because the AI doesn't know how to fight them. But that's just the AI not knowing how to fight them. That's if you were in a multiplayer scenario, people see you pick Huns and they go, okay, well, this is what I have to do to beat the Huns. I build walls and I keep my units outside of their combat range, because the Hun, I'll come to the Hun units in a moment, but Emblematic Quarter is not actually a district, it's their outpost. So just like how the Hittites got a special outpost, the Huns get a special outpost. Their normal outpost cannot be attached to cities. All it does is it builds the unique unit. If you have 4 so an outpost can grow to a maximum 4 population. Once an outpost hits 4 pop, it can grow more, but it tends to lose its population over time because it won't produce enough food to support more than 4 pops, so they'll just start dying, and you're supposed to attach the outpost to get the population and access it in your city. The Huns don't do that. The Huns, when they get 4 population in their outpost, they create a Hunnic Horde, which is 4 of their unique unit. The Hunnic Horde is their unique unit, which is a mounted nomad. It gathers food through fighting and ransacking in order to increase their numbers. You can split them up once you've trained them. You can split them up, and then when they ransack, they gain food, not gold. And as they gain enough food, I think it's 40 food, they pop out a new Hunnic Horde. Ransacking a tile generally gives about 80 food. I think it's between 40 and 80 food. So you either pop out 1 or 2 extra Hun hordes. So if your opponent has attached an outpost to a city and they haven't expanded towards that outpost, then all of those tiles are just fair game to go ransack, and you can ransack them to generate more Hun units. The special ability of the besides that, the special ability of the Hunnic units is free riders. They can act a second time after attacking, right? So what they can do is they can shoot, they can then move, and then they can shoot again. Or they can move, shoot, and then shoot again. So they get basically 2 attacks, right? And they're about 22 strength, but they get 23 strength from the Hun ability, so they're like 25 strength units, which makes them about as strong as swordsmen. The thing is, because there's no upgrade to range units in the classical era, The archers are not a very good counter to the Huns. You need archers to counter the Huns, but the archers are not very good in this era. However, Hun hordes only have a range of 1. They can only attack tile to tile. They have a ranged attack, but they can only attack tile to tile. They can shoot into a city, but they cannot shoot 2 tiles into a city, right? And this is where I think the Huns actually aren't that powerful. If you were talking in a multiplayer scenario, in single player, the AI will just like run their units out to attack the Huns, and the Huns will just shoot them apart, right? They'll just pull them apart, and then they'll take the city. In a multiplayer scenario, the Huns have to sit there sieging a city, right? They have to sit there and siege to get siege weapons, so that they can knock down your walls, so they can get the Hun hordes into the city, right? And it takes quite a while for tiles to get destroyed by siege weapons, right? It takes like, even if you build like 5 of the classical era siege weapons, which you have to do quite a lot of tech to go get, which obviously the Huns can't attach. They can't attach their outposts, and I don't even think they can upgrade them into cities. Can't remember. I don't think they can. They might be able to, but they can't attach them, which means their cities are inherently smaller or have less output than other people, right? That's just how the Huns work. Their cities just have smaller output because they can't attach outposts. So, whilst their military numbers might be inflated, their economy is very small, which means that them getting the tech to get classical era siege weapons is going to take them a while. And when they get them, they have to siege you, they have to build the siege weapons, and then they have to assault you. They have to blow the walls down first, and then they can get Hun hordes in one at a time, right? And if you've got just like 1 unit of immortals sitting inside of a district, and they just poke the Hun unit that comes through the walls every turn, the Huns aren't going to make any progress whatsoever. If you build your city 2 tiles deep, rather than, because you've got your city centre, they have to capture the city centre to get the flag to win the siege, right? Ahead of schedule, or they have to kill all units. Now, normally what happens is the AI will sally forth, or they'll move their units up to the edge of the city every turn, and the Hun hordes will just shoot them apart, right? That's what happens with the AI. Against the player will just go, cool, I have the Hun. Now, if the Huns are nowhere near you, if the person who picked Huns is nowhere near you, you don't have to worry about it. But if the Huns player picked Huns and they're quite close to you, all you do is go, cool, right, my city is not built in such a way that it can defend itself from the Huns. So what I'll do is I'll focus on building my city so it has proper defenses against the Huns. I'll build a garrison, I'll build more districts. Rather than snaking my districts out, I will build them directly next to each other to create a 2-tile depth, right, around the civic centre. So if you've got your civic centre in the middle, you have all the tiles around it, or at least, 1 tile out, are covered, and then all the tiles around that are covered, which means the Huns, if you have units in the central tiles, like archers, the Huns cannot attack them. So your archers are free to shoot the Huns to death, and they just ride around your walls doing nothing, right? Unless they can break the walls down, right? And that's basically how I treat it, right? So if you've got archers, they just sit in the middle tiles. And if you've got spearmen, they can sit on the outer tiles, and as the Huns move up to attack them, the spearmen can retaliate. Or you can get some swordsmen to sally forth, or get the levy to sally forth, and try and break the siege weapons. But generally speaking, you're basically just buying time for your archers to just kill off the Huns and wait for more reinforcements to arrive. That's what you're doing. And like, yeah, the Huns might have numbers, but if you've got like 6 archers shooting Hun hordes, you're going to kill one every round. And they're not going to make any progress on killing your units. So I think if you play it correctly, the Huns aren't as dangerous as they seem, but you do have to play it correctly, and I think some people will assume the Huns are more powerful than they are, because the thing is, the Huns don't have an economy behind this. They can't attach outposts. They're not going to expand their economy as fast as literally any other civ in the era will have a stronger economy than the Huns. All the Huns do is ride around and just be a nuisance for everyone, right? And yeah, that's more or less how it goes. So I wouldn't treat the Huns as like a game-breakingly overpowered. That's why they're in B tier. They're good at what they do, but that is all they do. They're a one-trick pony, and that's why I don't think the Huns are as powerful as people make them out to be, right? Because if you're looking for a power level of a culture, it has to be able to exceed in various different ways. The Achaemenid Persians have a good unit that can be used defensively and offensively. they have a good quarter that generates the money and a decent amount of influence. And then they also have the ability to get more cities, which allows them to play builder more. So the Persians are good at doing multiple things. The Huns are only good at doing warfare, and even then, there is a counter to it. So yeah, that's why the Huns are going B tier. They're not C tier because they are very good at what they do. It's just that is the only thing that they do. Right, moving on, we've got the Mauians. The Mauians, let me just find their picture. Here it is, Mauians. Mauians are going B tier, and they're going to go high B tier. Now, I was thinking about putting the Mauians in A tier, but they just don't quite match up to the Persians and the Celts. But let's talk about what the Mauians do. So, the Mauians are an aesthete nation, so they're all about influence. Their trait is science and faith. It's called Guiding Light. They get 10 science and 10 faith per independent people under patronage on the capital's main plaza. So, right, independent peoples are basically non-player nations that they take over a territory, right? They take over a territory on the map and they build a city there. The Mauians get 10 science and 10 faith for every independent nation. They don't conquer, they basically just improve their relations to 100. And rather than assimilating that independent nation, they just keep them at high relation. And they get extra faith and extra science. Now the science is kind of a whatever. The faith, getting 10 faith is an extra holy site, right? Well, it's not quite an extra holy site, but it's a lot of faith, right? So they can spread their religion very quickly by getting independent peoples under patronage. But science-wise, it's nice. It's an okay bonus. But the problem is that independent peoples, you generally want to assimilate to get control of their cities, or you want to conquer them because, well, they built a city for you. And some of the independent peoples are aggressive, some are passive. If you have high influence with them, they will flip to passive towards you. But the aggressive ones will come out and they'll try ransack your outposts if you don't deal with them. And if you attack them, then you'll lose all of your trust with them, and then you have to go re-get your patronage again. So if you get unlucky, like you might pick the Mauians if you're in a part of the map where you have like 3 independent peoples that are on tiles next to each other, quite close to you. You might pick Mauians for that, but it's kind of a map-based bonus if you want that. The Emblematic Quarter is the Stupa, which gives 1 influence, 2 faith, and 3 science. And then it gives an additional 2 influence per adjacent district. So it gives a very small amount of science, a small amount of faith, and it gives you some influence if you build districts. If you build districts around it, it's not great. It's fine. It's not great. It also comes with a stability hit, like most districts. So I think if you remove the stability hit from it, it would be probably more relevant. But right now, it's kind of like I might build one in my larger city to get used to the extra influence, but assuming you surround it with districts, it might get like an extra like 8 influence, which is nice, but it's not fantastic. It's good, but yeah, honestly, they're a bit more of a faith civ, so I would prefer it if they had maybe bonus faith per adjacent district rather than influence, despite being an aesthete nation. There is no faith nation, so yeah, just getting faith is kind of like a bit difficult to do. And I think the Mauians would benefit from getting extra. Yeah, I'd probably give the extra faith per adjacent district rather than influence because they seem to be a bit more focused on faith. But there you go. However, the unique unit. Now, the unique unit is what pushes the Mauians up to B tier. Okay, it really does. The unique unit is what pushes the Mauians up to B tier. They get the Samnaya, and lots of people will have mentioned this if you looked at the Humankind Reddit or played the Opendev. The Mauian unit is absurd. Right, so it's a ranged elephant archer, and it has about 30 strength. I can't remember exactly how much strength it has. I'll try to see exactly. Yeah, they have 30 strength, right? And they've got good range as well. So they're a ranged unit in the classical era, which there is a shortage of. They have 30 strength, which is about the same as a medieval crossbowman. And the special ability is they ignore penalties from fighting in melee. Which basically means that these things are freaking classical era tanks. They are absurdly strong. Whereas the Carthaginians have melee elephants, so they actually they get enemy units get a retaliation attack, the Mayans don't care, right? They just ride up to you with an elephant, fill you through full of arrows, so that you basically get a free attack for every attack you make against them. And the thing is, if you attack them in melee, they still get to retaliate. They just don't get the penalty. So they're just 30 strength elephants that just ride around and just slaughter you, right? The Mauians are like, honestly, the Mauians basically do warfare better than the Huns, right? I would bet the Mauians beat the Huns in a 1v1 if you had. Because the Mauians also have more cities and they can attach outposts and stuff. So the idea is that the Mauians can get an economy to build a bunch of these war elephants, and they will slap people. They are absurdly powerful, right? They will shred swordsmen of the era. Spearmen do nothing against them. Classical era archers, ancient era archers, sorry, will literally die in one hit to these elephants. So you can't fight them with ancient era archers. You just have to throw loads of swordsmen at them. And if they're defending a city, like, good luck, basically. Good luck. They are so good. So good. So that's why they're B tier, right? They've got kind of a meh civilization ability. They've got kind of a meh emblematic quarter, but they have the strongest era, the unit in the era. And that's why I'm putting them at B tier, because they can any war against the Mauians is hell. It's so difficult to fight the Mauians because their unit is so good. So I honestly think the Mauians need to have their unit toned down, because it's literally as strong or even stronger than medieval crossbowmen. So they get it relatively early on in the era as well. I think they get it at Mount of Warfare, so they do get it pretty early, and it is absurdly good. It's absurdly good. So that's why the Mauians are B tier. All right, next we have the Mayans. The Mayans are. I didn't actually play the Mayans, but they're going to take the final B tier slot only because, sorry, Rome fanboys, but yeah, I'm going to have to give Rome the final C tier slot when we get there. God, look, the Hellenic nations, Greeks and Romans, both going to be C tier. Right, Mayans. Let's talk about the Mayans. The Mayans are a builder civ. Their ability is tireless spirit, 2 industry, on district, producing industry. So they're the opposite of the Celts. Celts get 2 food on farming districts. The Mayans get 2 industry on industry districts, right? The emblematic quarter is the Ku'na. It's K apostrophe so I think it's Ku'u or Ku'u. I don't really know how you say it, but Ku'na. And it's kind of like a pyramid type thing. It collects industry. And it produces 2 faith, 3 industry per number of territories. So if you have 10 territories, it produces 30 industry, which is a hell of a lot. That's like 5 extra workers. And it also produces 4 industry per adjacent maker's quarter. So this thing produces a hell of a lot of industry, right? If you need production, the Mayans got you covered, man. These if you have, again, if you got 10 territories, you produce 30 extra industry building one of these, and you can build one in every territory. So if you have, say, a city and it's got 4 outposts attached to it, you can build 5 of these, and that's like an extra like 200 production if you get makers quarters associated with them. The fact that they exploit industry on tiles, they get affected by makers quarter industry benefits, I think, from infrastructure. And then, yeah, they also provide a little bit of faith, so, you know, it helps you spread your faith, which is nice. It's just like a little bit extra. Again, cherry on top, a little bit extra icing, you know. It's the chocolate sprinkles, you know, or the hundreds and thousands. That's what it is. It's the sprinkles. It's the sprinkles on top. So yeah, Ku'na is really good. Emblematic Quarter solid. Civilization ability is fine. It's like the civilization ability of +2 industry on districts is like whatever. It's nice. It's not gonna end the game. It's not game break. It's just good. Never bad. It's never bad. The emblematic unit is the Noble Javelineers. These guys are 25 strength range units. I think the 25 strength. So they are a classical era range unit, which automatically puts them a bit higher on the list because there is no other alternative for classical era range units. I think honestly one of the best balancing decisions that Humankind could do is to add a 20 strength archer unit just for everybody in the classical era. I think that would make a massive difference to the balance of the game. I don't think it would be overpowered. Swordsmen are 25 strength, so they'll still absolutely get slapped by them, but it does give archers a +4 strength bonus in the classical era. It makes them a bit more competitive. And it wouldn't step on the toes of nations that get classical era range units, like the Mayans, because again, as I said, they're 25 strength range units, and their ability is poison. It applies a poison status to the target, which reduces its move speed and attack range. Right? It doesn't say exactly how much, and I don't actually know how much it does. I can check the wiki. It might say on here, where's poison? Poison. -2 movement, -1 attack range, right? A standard archer, I believe, has 3 attack range or 2 attack range. Standard archer's got 3 attack range, so yeah, they can really mess up another archer's attack range, and reducing movement speed by 2 makes it a bit difficult, like for I don't know, like honestly, the movement range doesn't matter. I never noticed the movement range making much of a difference. But I guess it does make it a bit more awkward to reposition your units around, especially if you've got a couple of tiles to cross to get next to the noble Javelineers. But generally speaking, it's I mean, the attack range malice is more relevant because it can screw up where your opponents have positioned their archers, and then it makes it harder for their archers to reposition. So they're a bit more of an archer counter unit than anything else. But yeah, generally speaking, noble Javelineers, 25 strength archer unit in the classical era, solid. That's mostly what you want them for. The special ability is whatever, but yeah, solid emblematic quarter, solid unit. The civilization ability is a bit that's why they don't quite get to A tier, because it's not like crazy good. It's just pretty good. So yeah, that's why we're putting them in B tier. And finally, there'll be no Delenda Est here except Rome Delenda Est. Rome is going in the C tier. If I can find where Rome's picture is on here. Here it is, Rome. Rome is going C tier. They're not... yeah. Alright, let's talk about Rome. What really lets Rome down is their emblematic quarter. It's the fact that Rome doesn't quite like match up to the other civs in like raw potential is partly because they're emblematic quarter, and it's also partly because of their special unit, which I'll come to in a moment. So starting off, they're an expansionist civilization. Their ability is Legion's Finest. They get 1 unit slot available for each army. So armies have a certain number of units that can sit inside of them. So you can only have 1 army per tile, but the amount of units you can put in the tile is based on your technology. Rome gets an extra unit slot for each army, and that's for the rest of the game. So if you pick Rome, your armies can, in theory, be bigger than everyone else's, which is relevant. And that's the one thing that probably, you know, that it's a defining fact. You might take Rome just for that ability, because it is actually pretty good, but it's more of like something you would build into as opposed to being actually powerful in that era, because you need to have the population growth and the production, so you need the infrastructure and stuff set up so that you can actually fill your armies up, and that becomes more relevant in the early modern industrial, where, you know, population growth is every turn. You can spit out units every turn. Like when you have these big, large scale battles, that's when the extra unit slot comes in more relevant, because you can fit more troops into your reinforcing armies and into your main army. But in the actual classical era, that's a little bit less relevant. It's not bad, but yeah, it's a little bit less relevant. The Triumphal Arch is their emblematic quarter. It doesn't collect anything. What it gives is 3 influence, +3 stability, and then -10 stability. Why it gives +3 stability and -10 stability, I don't know, but it gives a bonus on Victorious City. Victorious, basically, when you take when you win a war, you get victorious on your cities, which provides I don't know what it I can't I think it gives you a stability bonus anyway. But if you have a triumphal arch in the city, it gives an extra 5 influence and 10 stab. So you get 8 influence, 10. I think it lasts for like 10 turns or something. So 10 turns after winning a war, you get some extra influence and stab. It the fact that you lose stab by building it is dumb. If the Triumphal Arch was 3 influence, 3 stab for building it, the fact it doesn't collect any resources, it's got a bit of a tumulus problem because it doesn't collect resources. You're using up a tile to lose stability and not get much for it. So the Triumphal Arch really shouldn't cost you stability, just like the Tumulus shouldn't cost you stability, because they have no adjacency bonuses, they don't collect resources, they don't do anything, right? Inherently they give 3 influence, right? That's what Triumphal Arch does. You have to win a war to get the extra influence stability, which is like fine, but it's not like stability. Again, stability is a bit easy to get right now because of certain mechanics in the game, so anything that generates stability is automatically a bit lower on my list. So the Triumphal Arch comes in at kind of like, This is honestly, it's about on the same level as Tumulus. It's like I would never really build it. Maybe build it for the influence, kind of, maybe. But generally speaking, they're not very good. So besides its Civ bonus, Rome does get a good unit. They get the Praetorian Guard. Which anyone who knows anything about Rome's history actually hates the Praetorian Guard. All my homies hate the Praetorian Guard. Honestly, I don't know why they made the Praetorian Guard the emblematic unit of the Romans when the Roman legions were a lot more emblematic of Rome as a military force. The Praetorian Guard were mostly just a corrupt force that the Senate used to kill emperors. But yeah, the Praetorian Guard were just like the elite guards of Rome, but they kind of ended up becoming a bit more of a political entity than an actual military force. So I think it's a bit weird to have them as the emblematic unit from a realism standpoint, but also the Praetorian Guard themselves, they come in at Imperial Conquest, which is one of the latest techs in the Ancient Era. They are a 30 strength swordsman unit, or like melee unit. They're not anti-cavalry, they're just 30 strength melee unit, which is one of the highest strength values you can get on a unit, but they do come in at the end of the era, so you'd expect that. They give the ability Tactical Superiority. The rear attack applies whenever an ally is adjacent to the target, no matter their position. So if the Praetorian Guard are base to base with an enemy unit or multiple enemy units, those enemy units are considered to be flanked by a rear attack. Rear attack gives +4 strength. So as long as you have a Praetorian Guard engaged with an enemy unit, that enemy unit is going to be... There's no penalty for being rear attacked. It's just a combat strength bonus for units attacking that unit. So the Praetorian Guard give you +4 strength to all units attacking the target they're engaged with, right? Which is a massive bonus, right? It means that other Praetorian Guard attack at 34 strength. It means that other swordsman units get 29 strength when they're attacking units. Horsemen get bonus, they go up to like 27 strength or whatever. So the Praetorian Guard do get a big bonus for just face like how the hoplites, they just kind of meat grind their way forward, and that does make them a formidable unit. But unlike the hoplites, they come too late in the era to be truly a relevant unit, right? On top of that, I don't see why Rome doesn't get access to them as a replacement to swordsmen. Honestly, that's what's holding Rome back. I think Rome needs to just replace their swordsman unit with not Praetorian Guards, but Legionnaires. And the Legionnaires should get Tactical Superiority as their bonus, which means that you can just build swordsmen, you enter Classical, you start building swordsmen, and the Roman war machine is online, right? Rather than having to wait till the end of the era to get a unit that doesn't really fit thematically or historically, and it comes in too late to be truly relevant. Because if you're getting Praetorians and then people advance to the medieval era and get pikemen which have higher strength than Praetorians, and yeah, the Praetorians still technically have higher strength when they're attacking them, but like your opponent could just use crossbows and then the Praetorian's not very good. So yeah, they come too late in the era to be relevant. So that's why the Rome is coming in at C tier. They're just not They're just not relevant on the era that they get their stuff out. They get their stuff too late, and their stuff isn't good enough. So unfortunately, C tier. Yeah. Right. That's all of the classical era nations. Again, I will end this video by saying, despite what I have to say, it comes with constructive criticism, hopefully, so people can take their own opinions or maybe give their own insight into how they found these things worked for them. But personally, this is where I would place these civilizations. Everyone's always welcome to comment with their own opinions based on their experiences in the Humankind Opendev or questions about the Opendev in general. I will say, as I said in the previous video, I loved the Opendev. I was disappointed when it ended. I wanted to play more. Humankind is making changes from the Lucy Opendev to the Victor Opendev. The changes they made were great, and definitively, I had lots of fun, and I have no doubt that when the game fully releases, it will be well polished, at least from a graphical, sound, UI kind of perspective. I know some people complained about the UI. I found the UI to be really good, but some people maybe just don't like the style. But either way, like I think on a graphical and like sound level, it's going to be fantastic. Gameplay wise, I like the gameplay. Some people don't. I like the gameplay. I think the combat is really its biggest selling point for a 4X. It's one of the best combat systems I've seen in a 4X, and the district building and the adjacencies and stuff and the city building and stuff that's all really fun as well. That's a nice take on just like building lists and just putting down getting workers to run around the map and build things. I think just having districts and then population is a good way of doing it. um, the map is less cluttered with additional entities running around, so it's like, oh, entities are running around on the map, they are military entities. That's like it kind of it separates the two, like things running around on map, military, things in the city, economy and like internal affairs, right? So it's like it separates the two, it makes it a bit clearer, so I like that. And generally speaking, I think any balance issues that the game has will either be resolved when it comes out, or it will be resolved shortly when it comes out. I know it's coming with a modding kit as well, so if there's stuff that people think is really broken or needs to be changed immediately, I'm sure that some clever soul will jump into the files and quickly just change some values, and problem solved. So who knows? I might do it myself. But yeah, that's my tier list for the Humankind classical era cultures, and next one we're going to look at is the medieval era cultures. So thank you all for watching. If you watched up to this point, I hope you enjoyed. I know it was a bit shorter than the ancient era one, but the ancient era one I wanted to cover what the different cultural, like militarist expansion, builder, etc. I wanted to cover what those did, so it could perhaps inform people of why they are relevant to the balance of a civilization. But yeah, I think generally speaking, this is where I'd place these cultures, from my gameplay and my understanding of the game from the Victor Opendev. Okay, so thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. It's been me, Chef Commander Coffee. I will see you next time for the medieval. It will be next in the playlist. So when I say I see you next time, next video, yeah. Medieval culture tier list. See you guys then.